Crimson Interlude. Alright. Let's go meet our new faction. The ride was long, especially for someone exhausted and hurting all over. The headache settled happily at the base of my skull, a throbbing pain that spread around the sides of my head and down into my neck. But despite the pain, what Jack had said about the reverse cage thing made me afraid to sleep. If I was somehow doing something to hide our presence, would sleeping disrupt it? I had no idea. So I huddled in the back seat, watching the scenery blare past us, and tried to stay awake for as long as I could. After a while, everything dimmed to a haze. I didn't even know how long Jack drove. Hours. Days, if we were heading to the night side. There were miles of tunnels that wormed under the wastes in the sea. Regardless of whether we were in an illicit one, the distance was the same. I drifted off eventually. Jack certainly had to put the car on auto and sleep for a while. We had stopped several times. There were dim recollections of waypoints, Jack helping me in and out of his car. At some point, I was certain there were other people around. I didn't know who. My mind was so clouded I was barely aware of what was going on. At one point, I woke up in a panic, my mind clear enough to realize I wasn't at home. Seconds later, I remembered it all. For a long time, I sat there with my heart painfully hammering in my chest, head still throbbing. Jack didn't seem to notice me, and I slumped down in the seat again. The tunnels seemed endless. We sped along, and the monotonous hum of the car eventually lulled me back to sleep. Or at least somewhat asleep. At least, whatever else was true, I was still safe. When I woke up again, the fog in my head had returned. The throbbing was ever present. A sour taste had settled unpleasantly in my mouth, keeping company with the nausea swirling in my stomach. Jack's vehicle had come to a stop. I struggled to sit up, with the soft sound of rain in my ears. Beyond the windows was a dark and unfamiliar place. We made it. We'd really made it all the way to Delphine. There was relief, but also a strange hopelessness. With things as they were, could I even go back now? Ever? I rubbed at my face, trying to work out what was going on outside. With the door open only a crack, the voices were muffled and the bodies reduced to dim shapes. Well, well, well. Wow, what a view on the night side. Oh yeah, I'm team night side all the way. This looks awesome. I peered out to find Jack and 3 other men. 2 were in suits, and the other... Chase? If he was here, it meant he was one of the friends Jack had been referring to. Which meant, of course, that I hadn't met him by sheer happenstance. They'd been watching me. It made sense, but why not just tell me what was going on instead of all the sneaking around? No, I guess they couldn't introduce themselves with a warning that Endgame was out to kidnap me. But Caleb and Ari had grabbed me just a few minutes later. Had he known they would do that? Ugh, I didn't know. My head hurt too much to try to suss out everyone's motives. I was here now, that's what mattered. Unsure what they were doing, I pushed the door all the way open and stumbled out of the car. Not terribly graceful, but all things considered, that was the least of my concerns at the moment. Chase glanced my way, raising an eyebrow. I knew I was in a sorry state, so I expected maybe a little more surprise or sympathy. He just looked unimpressed. Rude. Then again, unimpressed might just be his natural mood. I didn't know him well enough to say.
CAISSA,
Wait a minute. CAISSA? Not Chase? He lied to me. Shocking. I wasn't even shocked anymore. But why, though? Why give me a fake name? Probably because he's somebody important in Crimson, so he's gotta kind of play it a little cool, I would imagine. He just gives off the vibes of someone very important. What is going on here? Where are we right now?
just hang on a second. Think you can wait over there quietly for a moment, Butterfly? We're just working out some details on where to go next.
I don't appreciate being told to stand over here and be quiet. I did my best to straighten and glare at him, despite how horrible I felt. You have no right to talk to me that way. Frankly, they were all a little blurry, and I wasn't sure I was even glaring at the right person. But I was aiming my scowl at the blue smudge I suspected was Jack's head.
That's not what I meant, Butterfly. I just thought...
I have been to hell and back in a day. I don't have to bloody well be quiet!
Morgan, if you don't calm down, we're going to get a repeat of that incident with the car earlier. And you will fall over if you use any more psi today, intentionally or not.
Well,
That's enough. I think you've updated me on everything as it is, Jack. Drawing this out further is pointless. As you can see, she's had a rough time. I was hoping to meet up with you before we got back here, but we didn't have much time for a rendezvous. Nor did we.
After a brief silence, CAISSA turned to one of the two suits.
There's a blanket in the trunk. Please retrieve it for Miss Leone.
There he is with that, like, aggressive, I will take care of you. Just sit over there and take this blanket. The man nodded and obeyed. I watched him warily as he went first to the car, then approached me, but all he did was hand me the blanket as he was told. Not a word from him, not a smile. I hesitated, then took the blanket from him and wrapped myself into it.
Understanding the situation in full now, I still believe we should take her to the mansion.
The mansion?
I hear you on that one, Kay. But I'd rather have her go with me to Cordis. She clearly needs medical attention. She can get that there. And the court has the entire place locked behind a reverse cage. No one will find her. We can set one of those up at the mansion easily. But I won't have the court stormed by anyone trying to find her. Including my father.
His father? His father.
Even he's not that daring, CAISSA.
I wasn't sure if I should speak up. I didn't know that I understood enough about the situation to make any kind of decision. At the same time, Jack I knew, sort of. The court I'd heard of. This mansion was an unknown, but it's a mansion. But going to the court meant hiding out and trying to remain unseen. A mansion felt like I'd be, I don't know, more connected to things. Maybe even in a position to call for help. But I couldn't say that for sure. What should I do? I want to go with Jack or stay quiet and let them decide. Well, I don't want to go with Jack, so let me just check to make sure this is correct. Yes. Yes. Double confirmation. This choice will unlock CAISSA's route. Do I want to proceed? Yes. I didn't know. I couldn't make a decision like this with my head hurting so much. Just following along with the conversation was taking everything I had. For now, I'd trust they knew the situation better than I did. I just wanted to get somewhere, anywhere, I could sleep and just stop hurting.
Perhaps not. And perhaps he is. We'll go to the mansion for now. We can always relocate her if we need to. All right. I understand. It's your call. Besides, this will allow me to monitor her personally as she recovers. We went to this much trouble and risk. I refuse to lose her to something like psi fatigue. I'll follow you there then.
CAISSA nodded to one of the two suits, the same one who'd given me my blanket. I recoiled as soon as he set his hands on my shoulders.
Don't worry, Butterfly. He's just going to help you into the car. Be gentle with her. It seems she's been through an ordeal.
The man didn't respond, but did sort of nudge me gently towards the black car. At least he wasn't dragging me kicking and screaming. I gave in and half walked, half stumbled that way. Every time I swayed, the man in the suit put his hands on my shoulders to steady me. And when we reached the car, he took my arm and helped me in, shutting the door behind me. It still felt like a kidnapping, just a much more polite one. Yep. I sank into the seat, holding in a soft moan as I let my head fall back against the headrest. What mansion we were going to was a mystery, but I hoped to the heavens it had nice beds. And more than anything else, I just hoped they weren't lying when they said I'd be safe there. Oh, we're here! It's Crimson time! Chapter 1, The Red King. Ooh, is CAISSA a king? Mayhap? Is that why he gives off important vibes? It was a few minutes later when the other men joined me in the car. Hello. I was gently nudged to the center of the back seat and found myself sandwiched between CAISSA and one of the two suits. As the other man got in and started driving, no one spoke. I looked back once and saw Jack's small car following us. I was so tired. If I could, I would curl up, sleep, and shut out the world around me. The fear, the pain, and every awful thing that had happened. But I wouldn't be able to rest while surrounded by men I didn't know, driving to a location I didn't know. I watched CAISSA out of the corner of my eye, trying to not be obvious I was watching him. I had noticed this when we first met, but he was a distressingly beautiful man. Hey, we're back. I love that we already referred to him as distressingly beautiful twice. Refined features, pale blue eyes. Must have good genes. Lucky. But that aside, his features were cold, his expression shut off. It wasn't that he was clearly a serious person. There was something else, like he had a wall up between himself and others. Or maybe just me. I had seen some glimmers of warmth when we'd met, but if they were there before, they had evaporated already. I wonder what that tattoo is. Intricate roses climbed their way up his throat from his collarbone to his jaw. It must have hurt, but it was pretty. Somehow it struck me that everything in Delphine might be like that. Complex, pretty, and painful. That didn't really bode well for me, did it? Though, maybe I shouldn't try to draw life metaphors from someone's tattoo, when you're having psi fatigue as well. But I was tired, and that's where my thoughts ended up. Dread somehow crept up on me from somewhere, beginning as a slow crawl from the bottom of my spine until the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. At first, I clenched my hands together, trying to not let it show, but I couldn't stop my shoulders from shaking. Maybe it was just the pain and exhaustion, or the fact that I was growing more afraid with every passing moment of silence. I don't know how long I sat there like that until CAISSA looked my way, curiosity written on his face.
Are you still cold?
Both of these are saying no. I'm on my own now. When we first met him, we had the option to just, like, push past him or apologize. I feel like if you know, speaking opens up a dialogue. If you just shake your head, then he's probably just gonna leave you at that. But if you say something, he might respond back as well. I really hadn't expected him to speak at all. Not cold. The words came out hoarse, shaky, and not at all convincing. But I didn't want to tell him I was that scared of what was happening. If not because it might not be wise to show weakness, then because it seemed rude. Though it isn't as if they've been terribly polite. Well, he gave me a blanket earlier, I suppose. True. CAISSA frowned and, to my surprise, reached across me to pull the blanket tighter. The expression on his face had softened a little. He's just got mom energy. He wants to take care of you so badly. I'm okay with that. And he shrugged out of his jacket, laying that over me as well. Damn, thank you, sir. To say the gesture surprised me was an understatement. But he'd been a little like that when we met before as well. Fake name and all. Distant, but still kind. Maybe it's just because they think I'm a queen rank, though. Well, not maybe. I was certain that was it. They went to so much trouble to get me, they probably wanted me to be. I don't know. Not shivering and terrified as they took me wherever I was going, probably. Either way, I doubted it was wise to get on this man's bad side, so I tried for a weak smile. Thank you. He looked away, then back with a slight frown.
It won't be much longer, but you can sleep if you need to. I understand your psi fatigue is bad, and you haven't had the opportunity for proper rest. I'll wake you when we reach our destination.
I don't think I can sleep right now.
My intent isn't to harm you. I hope you realize that by now.
I let out a shaky breath. It helped to hear that, but it didn't undo everything else that had happened or change that I didn't know these people. I know. At least that was the impression I got from him anyway. So that was the one thing I assumed I could believe in what was otherwise a murky situation. He nodded, seeming pleased with that response. And after that, it was silence again. I slouched further in the seat and closed my eyes, trying to ignore the throbbing in my head. I just wanted to get where we were going and maybe finally have a bed I could sleep in. Actual sleep was elusive, but I was in and out of it during the drive. At times I heard them speaking, but their voices were muffled, and I was too tired to listen in. I couldn't tell if we drove a long time or a short one, but at some point the car stopped and someone was helping me out. I remember stumbling as they herded me up steps. And finally someone picked me up. I wonder who. Or that's what I assumed, because I didn't recall walking after that, and I distinctly remembered the sense of floating. I was only somewhat aware of being nestled into a warm bed somewhere with dim lights and a spicy fragrance. I was told to sleep. There was a gentle hand on my forehead that reminded me of home and the way Mum always cared for me when I was ill. Telling you, Mom energy. And that was the last I remembered for a while. This looks a lot like our room at Endgame, but, crimsonified. I like it, though. It's very fancy. I awoke to the sound of a light knock on the door. Forgetting I wasn't at home, I bolted upright and looked around the room in alarm. Snuh? I could only be glad no one was around for my less than stellar first attempt at speaking. Things came back to me a little at a time, fragmented memories jostling their way in. I was in Delphine, at CAISSA's mansion? I seem to recall having the impression the house was big when we'd arrived last night? I didn't know how long I'd slept. At least the headache is better. Strangely, or perhaps not so much, all my permissions with the nanosystem had been terminated. I couldn't even see the time or date. I had no idea how they managed something like that, but somehow it felt appropriate, sorry. It felt appropriate. Like being cut off from my old life with surgical precision. I shouldn't be surprised. The knock sounded again, and I remembered that's what woke me in the first place. Unknown woman, hello?
Miss Leone?
Yes? I pushed back the blankets as the knob twisted and someone entered from the hall. Oh, hello. An unfamiliar head popped around the edge of the door, a woman I didn't know. Her eyes widened when she saw me, standing next to the bed, and she quickly stepped inside.
Are you feeling better?
I think so, yes. Relief washed over her face.
CAISSA will be pleased that Celeste's attempts were successful.
Celeste?
One of our associates. A sort of doctor, if you will. She treated your psi fatigue. We were all worried about you for a while. I apologize for disturbing you. CAISSA has called for you, and I was asked to bring a change of clothes, and to help you shower if you need it.
How long did I sleep?
Around 8 hours. We intended to let you sleep longer, but...
Man, Morgan recovered a lot faster at the mansion than she did in Endgame. She shrugged. Thank goodness. I'd been half afraid she would tell me I'd slept for a week or something. I don't recognize you. A slight smile formed on her lips.
My name is Carrie Merilith, and I arrived this morning while you were asleep. The boss thought you might be more comfortable with another woman, and there are few in the mansion that work for him.
The boss? Was that CAISSA? He was the one in charge here? You mentioned that CAISSA sent for me?
The family doctor has arrived and would like to check on your condition. Celeste is not a licensed doctor. She took excellent care of you, though. Your seeing a physician is more a formality than anything.
I understand, I think.
If you need help cleaning up...
I'd been stripped down to my undergarments, and I had no idea where my clothes even were. Not that it mattered. They'd been dirty, torn, probably beyond repair. No, I think I can manage on my own, but I don't have anything to wear? Carrie lifted her hands, and I realized she was holding something for the first time. A fresh set of clothes.
I'll leave these here, and I'll be right outside if you need anything.
She left after that. I stood still, looking down at my hands, trying to sort through the jumble of emotions as reality began to set in. I was so far from home, and the crushing enormity of that fact settled over me. I wanted to talk to Mum. I wanted to go home. I wanted to not be here, having to worry about what would happen next. But that wasn't a possibility at the moment. Fretting would only make me feel worse about a situation I could do nothing about for the time being. I clenched my hands into fists and looked around, taking in my surroundings for the first time since waking up. And... wow. It was luxurious. A large suite with wood furnishings, rich colors, and books. Actual books lining a bookshelf on the other side of the room. I was itching to have a look at those, but Carrie said a doctor was waiting, and, well, I didn't smell entirely pleasant. I let out a shaky breath and grabbed the change of clothes she left. It was better to focus on the task at hand and not let myself get overwhelmed by everything for now. I couldn't help but wonder who these people were. As I stripped out of my clothes and turned on the water, the memory of sitting in that cafe with Jack resurfaced. Where were the refugees he'd spoken of? How did CAISSA fit into it all? I couldn't grasp any of it, and that was frightening. Please, let this have been the right choice. I buried my face in my hands, letting the hot water stream over me, and without warning, I found myself shaking all over again. There wasn't a particular trigger for it. Perhaps the normalcy of a shower after all the violence, running, and being in cars with people I didn't know. Perhaps it was the fact that this was the first time I was alert in days. I hadn't had the opportunity to slow down and contemplate it all until now. With staggering abruptness, emotions just came crashing in. I don't know how long I stood there like that, trying to breathe deeply and stop shaking. I wonder if it's because she has the emotional trait as well. Like, if she wasn't emotional, would she be shaking as much or at all? Numbness set in, and I started washing myself with almost mechanical decisiveness. I didn't want anyone to barge in on me because I was taking too long, so I focused on getting the job done. And trying to just be glad I was alive. Ooh, I like the new outfit. Very nice. After my shower, I realized I wouldn't have time to dry my hair fully. I did my best before I got changed into the clothes Carrie left for me. I was checking the mirror when I heard the knock. Carrie again. She was waiting when I opened the door. Sorry to keep you waiting.
It's fine. But if you're ready now?
I nodded.
Follow me. This is CAISSA's wing, so there aren't many others around, but please stay close.
What did that mean? Whoa. Fancy hallway. I wasn't sure I should ask her as we started down the quiet hall. She was right when she said there weren't others around. Even so, there was a savagely oppressive atmosphere about the place, regardless how lovely it was. Perhaps the fact no one else was around made it so. For the time being, I kept my questions to myself. I might get more answers from CAISSA himself. Carrie led me through a short labyrinth of halls before she stopped in front of another enormous door. She knocked once, and a voice called for us to enter. Nice. Very nice. The door led to another private suite, this one larger than mine and just as lovely. So many new people! Hello! And he's got a new outfit, too. Schnazzy or what? Waiting for us inside were CAISSA and two others I didn't recognize. An older man and a young woman who were standing near CAISSA. They all looked up when I entered, but only the older man smiled. I hesitated just inside, instantly worried when Carrie shut the door behind me without entering.
Miss Leone, I trust you're feeling better.
Somewhat, yes.
This is Dr. Rosenthal. He cares for the family's medical needs. And this is Celeste. She is my personal nurse. She looked after you while you were sleeping.
Personal nurse? That doesn't quite align with what Carrie said. Thank you for that. She nodded, but still didn't speak or smile.
Now, there's no need to be so nervous. You're here for a simple checkup, not an execution.
I gave him a wan smile, still not leaving my position near the door. Do I really seem that nervous?
A little. Why don't you come sit here, my dear? All I want to do is check a few vitals.
All right. I gave CAISSA a sidelong look as I made my way to the sofa Dr. Rosenthal was directing me to. I guess there wasn't much use for privacy here, was there? Everyone must know my situation at this point. And despite this being a medical checkup, there was a part of me that preferred not to be alone with anyone for the time being. Though, if this doctor asks me to strip, I'll kick CAISSA out myself. I had a feeling he'd show himself out if it came to that, though. When I sat, the doctor lifted my chin and began to check my eyes. CAISSA stood nearby, leaning against a bookcase and watching. It was a gesture that felt oddly protective.
Eyes are still bloodshot. Pupils are a little sluggish, but that's to be expected if your fatigue was as bad as I heard.
I'm no expert on the matter, but if the size of the headache I had is any indication. He felt gently along my jaw and then the back of my head, though I didn't know what he was looking for.
How is your headache? Better, I presume.
My head's a little fuzzy still, but nowhere near as painful as it was. Dizziness is mostly gone as well.
Good. Quite good.
He pulled a small scanning device from his briefcase and held it towards me, looking down at the display with a slight frown.
Your heart rate is elevated. You were just walking, of course, but I suspect...
He gave me a devious little grin.
That it could simply be because I'm handsome.
True. I'm sure that's it.
It usually is.
I could almost hear CAISSA rolling his eyes, but the humor and friendly demeanor put me at ease. I appreciated him being sensitive to my nervousness.
Now your blood pressure seems a little high as well. I reckon it's understandable you're showing signs of stress and exhaustion. I can imagine you've not had an easy time of it the last few days. I suspect all these symptoms will decrease with rest. I have one more thing I'd like to check, my dear. The young master also asked for a scan of your psi waves. I hope you don't mind.
Young master. I think we read about this before. Yes, we did. I shot CAISSA a quick glance at that title. Young master?
Doctor, I've asked you not to call me that. I apologize. Old habits and all. Please get on with it.
The doctor was still chuckling as he took another device from his bag and held it to my temple.
If you would hold still for one moment, this won't take long. Tell me, how long have you known you were a queen rank? That's quite something, isn't it?
Only a few days.
Oh, that must have come as quite the surprise.
I'll say. Though not as surprising as some other things I've encountered.
Such as?
Do you have a few hours? He chuckled and pulled the device away, checking the display. The smile vanished and his eyebrow shot up almost to his hairline. What is it? He held up a hand to me and waved CAISSA closer with the other.
If you wouldn't mind.
CAISSA raised an eyebrow, but obeyed, leaving his spot by the sofa to join us. He didn't protest as Dr. Rosenthal placed the device to his temple as well. What he was checking, I wasn't sure. Probably to make sure his device is actually working. He's like, that number can't be correct. Well, obviously reading CAISSA's Sci, but I couldn't say why. A sudden thought occurred to me. Was it possible this was all a mistake? That I was just some low-level infantry like I'd always assumed? I think we've read this as well. Yes? Yes, achieve promotion. Okay, yeah, I think we're good on that. There was a quiet stirring of hope in me as I realized that would mean I could go home, get this all straightened out.
So it is a match after all. How unexpected.
A match for what? Hope withered in an instant. A match? Cautious analytical. I mean, CAISSA's obviously an Esper. What does a match mean? A match? Our psi waves? What does that mean?
Oh? I'm surprised you don't know.
Espers weren't really my area of study, to be honest. I know only the bare minimum about them.
Were you a student? I thought I detected a new Albion accent. What was your area of study there?
I was...
Doctor, her area of study is irrelevant. Our time is short. Explain what you meant. Are you saying her psi waves are an exact match for mine?
I looked away, not trying to hide the frown. That was so... dismissive. As if who and what I was a few days ago were meaningless now. And why was our time short? You heard him. It's irrelevant. The doctor clicked his tongue, and I thought he might push the issue. But he let it drop, even though he gave CAISSA a very disappointed look that didn't seem to faze him at all. CAISSA's got things to do, okay?
As for what it means that you're able to match CAISSA's psi...
I'm not trying to match anyone's psi.
Perhaps, but most new Espers use their abilities unintentionally. For Queen rank mimicry, that's especially true. It comes so naturally to them they can be unaware they're doing it at all. That said, what most queens cannot do is mimic a king rank like the young master.
So he is a king. Fancy. Yes, we read about this because when we were in Endgame. Yes, okay. That all makes sense. So she can mimic a king's waves as well. Sounds pretty powerful.
At least I've never heard of one who could. Remarkable.
A king rank? CAISSA? But they were so rare. Even more than queen ranks. When I thought about it logically, there was no way I was a simple infantry, was there? With the teleporting I had done, the building, the flashes of foresight, it had been a useless hope from the start. If I could mimic the psi of other people, maybe I'd just been doing it my entire life, and that's why I'd always seemed to be nothing special.
At any rate, other than the lingering psi fatigue and stress, there are no other issues as far as I can tell. It seems your nurse here has done an excellent job of looking after her until I could get here.
He gave me a gentle smile.
You're going to be fine.
He turned on CAISSA as he closed up his briefcase.
And as for you, I would encourage you not to forget you're dealing with a person who has mental health needs, CAISSA. She's been through quite a lot, and I'm not terribly happy with the tone you're taking with her. Doctor, I'm sure you realize the situation we're dealing with here. None of us can afford to leave her upset and scared. You should know well the importance of emotional stability for developing Espers, especially strong ones. The
door to the room flew open and Carrie burst inside. CAISSA straightened, his expression going dark.
What's the meaning of this, Carrie?
I apologize for the interruption. Someone informed Mr. Fianchetto that Morgan is awake. He's on his way.
Wait, did she say Fianchetto? The Fianchetto family? That's where I know him from. Oh my god, why didn't I realize it sooner?
Pack it up, old man. Celeste, get out of sight. I don't want Father seeing you. Carrie, back outside.
Yes, sir.
Alright, there's some kind of to do with Dad. Are they like the mafia? Or what's going on here? Are they the mafia? There was a sudden flurry of movement as everyone obeyed without question. Carrie hurried back to the hall, and Celeste headed to another part of the suite. She cast a look back at me before vanishing through another door. I could barely even comprehend what was happening. The Fianchettos were a powerful and very wealthy family in Delphine. The head of the family was known to be a philanthropist. I'd seen reports about him a lot, running charity events to help with the conditions in Delphine and everything. Was it possible they were helping the ferry refugees Jack had spoken of? But why did CAISSA seem on edge? Unsure what to do, I stood as well and hovered near the sofa uncertainly. CAISSA planted a hand right below my collarbone without warning. I backed up rapidly, running into the wall behind me. I protested, but he silenced me with a curt command as he leaned close to speak in a low voice.
When my father arrives, do not talk back to him. Do not speak at all unless he asks you a question, and if he does, answer honestly. If you anger him, he will kill you.
What?
If he doesn't like you, he will kill you.
I felt like I couldn't breathe. What?
You may be a queen, but you are not able to defend yourself yet. And I'm in no position to protect you from him right now. What you do can affect not just your life, but those of my people here as well.
So CAISSA took a big risk, it sounds, by bringing her here. Okay. Well, we're getting entangled already. Wonderful. His expression was grim as he released me, and I thought I detected a slight tremor in his voice, as if he was afraid.
Do your best to make a good impression, Miss Leone. For everyone's sake.
There was no time to even digest what he'd said. How do I get your dad to like me? My brain had stopped at the indication his father might kill me, and before anyone could say anything else, there was a curt voice outside. Oh, hello, sir. I like your vampire cape suit jacket thing. A dark-haired man flanked by 4 others, who I could only assume were bodyguards, entered the room. He wasn't all that tall, maybe a little more than CAISSA, and they didn't look much alike but for the dark hair and piercing blue eyes. But he carried himself with an air of imposing authority. I knew instantly this wasn't the person I wanted to cross. Ever. And his gaze landed on me right away. I took a reflexive step back, only to realize I was already up against the cabinet and had nowhere to go. He frowned as he looked me up and down and seemed to find me wanting. CAISSA had told me to make a good first impression, and I wasn't sure I would be able to do that.
Miss Leone, allow me to introduce my father, Caris Fianchetto.
It's nice to...
So this is her.
I instantly stopped when he spoke over me, biting back the remark that came to mind. Caris tipped his head back, a serious look on his face as he regarded me for a drawn-out moment.
She's younger than I thought. She is the same age as me, father. I believe I mentioned it. So a child, then.
He looked to the doctor, who was still standing nearby.
And what are you doing here? He's only here to check on the psi fatigue. My report mentioned that we would have her checked by a physician to ensure there was no permanent damage.
Report? On me? I thought CAISSA was in charge of things here, but it was apparent by the stark shift in atmosphere that wasn't the case at all.
I was going to stop by your study for a quick drink on my way out, Caris. It's been a long time. And how is she? Remarkably well for the level of psi fatigue I was expecting. She needs a few days of rest and she'll be fine.
And he's suddenly in front of me. Caris Fianchetto came towards me. Every single instinct I had told me to run away from this man with his ice-cold gaze and steely eyes. It was a battle to not flinch away when he reached his hand towards me. He took me by the chin, turning my head as if examining me himself. I let him do it, and after a moment he released me, saying nothing. He turned away without a word. I sagged against the wall, no idea what I should do. I remembered CAISSA's warning to not speak unless he asked me a question.
I'm surprised you were able to get her away from Endgame, CAISSA. I admit I had my doubts. Jack is well trained and familiar with their methods. We had an advantage. I suppose that's true. You do have a knack for finding useful pawns. Even so, I'm not sure it was worth the effort to steal this fledgling queen. It would have been easier for Jack to kill her. Queens are too valuable to kill. Bringing her into the family was an opportunity I felt we shouldn't pass up.
The air between the two of them was frosty and distant. As he explained why he didn't kill me, CAISSA's mouth turned down at the edges. His eyes shifted away from his father's, and I just wondered about the conversations they'd had about me before Jack had shown up for me in New Albion. They clearly didn't agree how to handle me.
We already have a seasoned queen, if you remember. We have an infantry-level Esper that only recently obtained queen rank, father. It's not the same.
Ah, okay, so somebody got promoted here. Interesting. Not a natural queen, but a promoted queen. Okay. We read about promotion before.
The doctor has already confirmed Miss Leone's mimicry transcends Veli's, considering he's unable to mimic my abilities, yet she is mimicking my psi unconsciously.
Is your promoted queen a he? Interesting. Okay, so guys can be queen rank. Cool. Karis Fianchetto looked my way again, a hint of thoughtful appreciation on his features.
Is that so? Jack also said she released the largest psi burst he's ever seen, enough to bring down an extensive vivarium complex. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps it was wise to bring her here. I'll leave her in your hands, but I expect her to get control of that ability soon. Understood, father.
And that was all. Karis strode back to the door without looking my way again. He paused only to glance towards the doctor with a faint nod of his head.
I believe you wanted a drink, Charles. Of course. It was a pleasure to meet you, Miss Leone. Don't forget what I said about rest.
The doctor gave CAISSA a stern look as he passed by on his way out.
And you also do not forget what I said, young master.
The two of them left after that. I was alone with CAISSA with so many more questions about this place. What exactly is happening here? Jack said...
Jack wanted to get you away from Endgame. Discount what he said.
His voice was terse, cold, different from the tone he'd taken with me earlier. I thought he must still be on edge from his father's visit. I bit back the urge to snap at him, if only because I didn't think it would help. Did he lie to me?
Does it matter at this point? You are part of this family now. Everything else is immaterial.
It's not...
My father is not above killing you even now. I hope you realize that. Everyone here lives on a knife's edge of trying to ensure he doesn't become displeased with them. You're no different, so you should be prepared to show your worth.
What does that even mean? He continued on as if I hadn't even spoke.
Going forward, you will be guarded by Espers at all times, Miss Leone. This is as much to protect you as it is to show I'm taking my duties seriously. They will be my people, and they will guard you well. Your movements will be restricted to this wing of the mansion until I say otherwise. You'll begin training in a few days, but tomorrow you'll at least meet the person who will train you.
Training?
That will be all. You may leave. Carrie is outside. She'll escort you to your room.
fine. There was so much else I wanted to say. I wanted to stay and argue. I wanted to scream, to lash out. But I clenched my jaw, turned on my heel, and left his room as he'd said to. Because regardless of what I wanted to say, a greater part of me wanted to just get back to my room and try to lay out all the details of what was going on and figure out just what the situation was, because it was not what I expected. I glanced back as I stepped through the door, and CAISSA was standing with his back to me, one hand pressed to his temple. As CAISSA said, Carrie was standing outside the door, staring straight ahead, like a guard. So she's an Esper. I mean, I assumed so. There was no one else in the hall, and he'd specifically said Espers would guard me. And take me out if I disobey, I guess. Take me back to my room. Understood. If she could tell they upset me, she said nothing about it. Perhaps they were trained not to engage with others that way. When I stepped back into my room, I found someone familiar waiting for me. Well, 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 look who it is. Jack! What are you doing here?
Just checking in to see how you're doing, Butterfly.
Anger bubbled up the moment I saw him. Ooh. Emotional, confident, or cautious. Why did you lie to me? Well, I gotta get this emotion out somehow. If I can't yell at CAISSA, I'll yell at Jack. Seeing him standing there giving me that smirk as if nothing in the world was wrong made me snap. I was across the room in seconds. How do you think I'm doing? I had one hand lifted intending to slap him, but he caught my arm with ease. Damn you!
Not quite fast enough, Butterfly.
Stop calling me that! I hated the way he was grinning as though he found this all funny.
Not a fan? I can come up with another one if you like.
Let go of me! He pulled me closer, keeping both my arms pinned between us, the smile fading.
If you get too excited, you're going to lose control of your psi again. This time you might just burst a blood vessel, which would be a real shame.
I twisted myself away from him effortlessly, a sign he wasn't serious about holding me down, and put at least 1.5 meters between us. I should never have trusted you!
Maybe not. But I don't think it was the worst choice you could have made.
What's going on here, Jack? The Fianchettos? Why do they have their hands mixed up in something like this? Why did you lie to me about the court? Tell me the truth this time. I deserve to know.
Look, first, it might be a bit pedantic to point this out, but I didn't lie. There are quite a few Espers who have gathered together and are under the protection of the Fianchetto family, CAISSA specifically. Some view them as a somewhat unofficial affiliate of Crimson.
Crimson?
Crimson.
But they were... The Fianchettos were Crimson? The Fianchettos were one of the 4 families on the night side? They were supposed to be good people. They were supposed to be trying to improve things here, not heading up the group known for its attacks on New Albion's battery and power stations. Crimson was guilty of murder or worse than that. And they had been one of the factions after me. And I'd walked away from Endgame and right into their arms. I let out a bitter laugh because I didn't know what else to do at that point. You really brought me here and threw me to the wolves, didn't you?
If by wolves you mean CAISSA, then no. Karis was the one who wanted you dead. CAISSA is the one who convinced him to let you live. Karis wasn't happy about it, but Kay can be persuasive when he wants to be.
That tracked with the conversation they'd had in CAISSA's room. That doesn't mean I'm okay with this.
You might want to get used to it, Morgan. You won't be leaving.
My eyes narrowed slightly.
I'm sorry I misled you. But not everything I said was a lie. I'd have much rather taken you to the court's place in Chestershire, but CAISSA thought it would put everyone else in danger. And he didn't think his father would buy any excuses. And there are things you can get here that you can't get there. Despite Karis, this place is a lot more comfortable too.
You and I have very different definitions of comfortable.
I'm sure it sounds like an excuse, but Karis would have wanted you here at some point anyway, even if we'd taken you to the court. CAISSA wouldn't have brought you here if it wasn't necessary. You don't go against Karis's orders. It was hard enough to convince him to rethink his orders to have you killed. You don't know how much CAISSA put on the line to do that. And the only way it worked was to convince him it was a better idea to bring you here. Listen, I know you don't want to hear it, but CAISSA will protect you here. He won't harm you, or throw you away like you don't matter. That's not a promise I can make about Magnus Ulrich.
Well, we got to know Magnus a little bit, but we still need to find out what went down between Jack and Endgame at some point. How do you even know?
No one is going to make you throw your life away.
I didn't get that impression from Karis.
CAISSA isn't Karis.
CAISSA's obviously not in charge, and he seems as afraid of his father as everyone else.
Well, I won't argue there. They don't have a good relationship. I don't know that he's afraid of him, but he treads carefully where Karis is concerned. We all do.
Jack looked like he wanted to say something else, but instead he headed for the door.
Get some rest. You're going to need it.
Everyone kept saying that, but I had no idea how I was supposed to do it. With Jack gone, I flopped on the bed and stared up at the ceiling, completely lost. What have I gotten myself into?